All right.
Hello from Frederick, Maryland. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's my habit to read the chat, I should say, because I work with people who have ALS and they often use the chat to communicate during meetings. So I will be sure to check the chat when I can.
All right, well, it's 5:31, so we're going to go ahead and get started, see if anyone else trickles in. Welcome back to the final installment of our pre-summit webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about data, and I know we've prepped you guys a little bit about what to expect for today, and we're really excited. We're really excited to have Danielle Boyce here. Just a couple of quick logistics. Introduce yourself. So rename yourself using your preferred name, pronouns, and team name. Chat one thing you hope to gain from this webinar. And we'll kind of read those through as well. And just a reminder that we do have closed captioning available if you would like to enable that. And we also ask that you mute yourself and maybe turn off your camera to reduce bandwidth. When you go into breakout rooms later, you're welcome to open up your camera and unmute yourself as well. But for the presentation, we'll keep it pretty simple. And then please, please, please use the chat box. I already see folks who are saying hello and expressing what they're excited about. So we're excited to have you. And just a reminder that we are also recording tonight. And so this recording will be available on Moodle later. But right now I wanted to introduce Danielle Boyce, who is our presenter for this evening. Danielle works for Johns Hopkins Biomedical Informatics and Data Science. She's a faculty member there, data science program, a data scientist, instructor, patient advocate, and researcher. She has served on several patient caregiver advisory panels for academic institutions, pharmaceutical companies, nonprofits, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and others. She currently advises the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and teaches the Johns Hopkins Biomedical Informatics and Data Science program. So with that, I just want to welcome Danielle.
Well, thank you so much, Addie. And I'm thrilled to be back again this year. This is really the highlight of my year in terms of these kinds of engagements, talking about data equity and data science. I love convincing you that you are indeed a data person, because a lot of folks say I'm not a data person and they're intimidated, and it's not at all the case. It doesn't need to be the case. So my objectives are to help you to review what we're calling your circle or universe. I'm not always going to use data science-y or biostatistics terms. I'm trying to kind of keep it in a more approachable format here. So your circle and your universe, and assessing the barriers in your data collection. And these are all going to be project specific for you, but I think we can find some common areas to address. Understand methods and avenues of data collection, summarize the data, and access new ways to visualize and humanize your findings. And I want to start by giving you a little kind of a level setting story here. I call it the data-driven nap time. So I work from home mostly. I work remotely, as many of you do or have done over COVID. And one day at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, early evening, I came downstairs, and I have 4 children aged 3 through 14. And I didn't know where at the time the baby was. She was about 18 months old. And I asked my husband, "Where's the baby?" And he says, "She's taking a nap, 5 p.m. 5 p.m. and my baby is taking a nap. What am I thinking? I'm thinking she's going to be up all night. I'm thinking she's going to wake up at 7 and then we're not going to be able to get her back down. Now, did I guess that? No. That what you might call intuition or things that just parents know. Really, I have like the optimal nap time in our house. Somebody says 5 to 7. So in our house, not so much. And so I know this because I have a database in my head of all the times all of my kids have ever napped and what time they woke up and how late they were up that night. So a lot of times, first thing I want you to think about is a lot of these things that we just call stuff we know as parents or our intuition, really that's data related and data science related. Next slide, please. So in terms of equity, it's really a lot of times the first mistake people make, and I probably don't have to tell any of you this, but the first mistake folks make is to not think about all of their stakeholders. I think we can go to the next one. Yeah. So who are the people or the stakeholders, the groups, the organizations that you're trying, there you go, that you're trying to capture? And this also gets to why. So who are people? If you're doing let's use the example throughout this as a survey, because that's pretty common. You're doing a survey to find out, to evaluate maybe a program that you have and see where you can improve it. So you have educators, you might have administrators, parents, students, maybe others who are important in this equation, depending on what you're interested in. And what are the barriers that exist to make it hard to capture the data in this population? So what are their characteristics, the demographics, their specific needs, culture, language, lifestyle. So an example of lifestyle might be, maybe they work, at my daughter's school, I have 2 kids in preschool, and they will often say to me, "Oh, it's nice to talk to you. We never see you. We never see you." Well, because pick up and drop off are at 9 and noon, and I have a job then. So I have my husband, fortunately, is able to do it. So if there was any kind of data related intervention that would have taken place and they would choose to pick the parents who picked up and dropped off, it would miss me, even though I'm the key decision maker when it comes to my kids' educational needs. My husband often defers to me when it comes to that stuff. So that's a really good example. So think about people who work at, shift work, people whose children travel, a long way. So think about their internet access. So this all overlaps with the clinical research work that I do at Johns Hopkins and elsewhere in groups that I advise. So I do a lot of work in ALS, for example, Lou Gehrig's disease. And some big databases and studies would have you believe that it's a primarily white person's illness. But when you really look at the data underneath that, that could very well be that it is people, it is based on the people who are referred for various reasons, because they have better access to care, right? Because they are seeing clinicians who are providing them with these referrals to participate in these studies, right? So it's not necessarily accurate to say that. And so that's what we're talking about here. Think about how these factors related to the people you're interested in learning more about and representing and using to tell your story and talk about your needs. How might they have barriers that need to be overcome in order for you to access them and gather information about them? And this is kind of a backwards way of doing things based on how you might have learned in school. If you went to school for public health research, I went to school for epidemiology. because you have a very specific methodology, you're doing everything quantitatively, and you stick with the plan, right? But not necessarily, depending on the type of work that you're trying to do. If you're really trying to count people, sometimes you have to go to where they are. Literally, you have to go to their house. Sometimes you have to do things qualitatively in a conversation because they don't want to fill out a form. And you have to be willing to do these things in order to overcome the barriers that you might have. Next slide, please. And so this is the definition of equity from the American Alliance of Museums: the fair and just treatment of all members in a community. And this is all of these stakeholders that we're talking about. So what is data equity? The way that equity is considered in collection, analysis, and reporting. Equity or lack of equity will have significant impact on how you define the problem and respond to it. Next slide, please. So what are some of these barriers to data collection? Next slide, please. So how do I find people if they're not easily accessible? And this is true for me in my own research and clinical work, as it is for any work in public administration or education. Language. We have all of these beautiful quality of life measures, but so few of them are translated consistently, right? So we skip a lot of people in clinic if we don't have a translator and we don't have the instrument itself translated. So language is not to be minimized. If you're only capturing English speaking people, then you're going to miss a whole big group of folks. And technology has, for me, has become just a real eye-opening experience working with people with ALS. And it's not just the technological barriers where people do not necessarily have an internet connection. There's a lot more to it. Is your survey responsive to the phone, right? Because a lot of people are accessing things on the phone. And if they are accessing things on the phone, then yes, maybe they have data and the connection, but maybe they don't want to use it for that, is one thing we've learned. But with people with ALS, they often use eye gaze technology, these incredible technologies, and they use their eyes. It's all programmed into a computer, and I work with people who write books with their eyes and make beautiful maps with their eyes and artwork and everything else. But their eye gaze technology isn't necessarily compatible with my surveys that I send out to the ALS community, for heaven's sake. So it's really important to think about technology, and just the fact that you're offering multiple types of technology doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help the people that you're trying to access. And then you say, gee, I sent it out. I sent emails out. The other thing about this, and this is just my personal preferences, but I remember the days before we had online surveys, because I'm older than maybe I look. So I remember back in the early 90s when we were trying to say, there was no Survey Monkey, there's no Qualtrics, right? What did we have to do? We made the survey, we mailed it to someone, or we handed it to someone. So never forget, these more old-fashioned options are available to you, especially if you're having trouble with your response rate. Sometimes, I know it's true for me, I get so many emails a day, and if there's an optional email for me to click on and a survey from my child's school, I might not click it, right? So there's a lot of reasons, and it isn't necessarily an equity issue, but sometimes it's that lifestyle issue, and just how busy we are. So what are these workarounds? So how can we adjust and change our methods? So those are the things that I was just describing. And again, I think we've been taught to only do quantitative research, right? Quantitative meaning questions that can be coded, 0, 1, different categories of race, different categories of profession, Likert scale 1 through 5. And if you can't fill that out, then it isn't part of the way we've planned our study, and therefore let's throw it out. And so I challenge you to think of mixed methods approaches, which I use all the time in my work in patient research. I do a lot of patient engagement and patient preferences research. And so I'll ask narrative questions, and then I will try to capture their demographic information without even having to have them fill something out. So maybe I'll have a structured interview format, and I'll have a conversation with them, and then I'll pull the data from that conversation. That's not always going to be enough. There might be some state requirements with data that you need to collect where you absolutely have to do things the way they want you to do it, right? But there's a lot that you can do with that mixed methods approach. And if it's important to you to know what they think, you can find a way. There's also trust issues. And that's going to be something that I think representation matters so much. The people approaching them to participate, the sensitivity that's used, the planning for the outreach, and the specialization of the people that you use to do that outreach is all factors in to successful recruiting of individuals who are reluctant to participate. And that's very sad, but very true and understandable, that a lot of people just don't trust others to document information about them. But that's really sad, because then you lose their valuable information and their representation in your data set. So once we readjust and define who our target audience is, how do we define our purpose? And that's kind of what I was getting back to earlier about, when can you use kind of off the grid kind of techniques versus when you have to do things by the book. Next slide, please. So it's really important as you design your own survey. So I'm thinking about your own surveys or studies, the documentation to, let's say you're putting together a pilot data for a grant application. It's really important to think about who your audience is. A board member, a funder, the state. These are all different audiences and so it's valuable at the outset to think about what are you hoping to learn, and what are you hoping to express about this population, the people that you're trying to study and learn more about, and who is this audience. And that will definitely change your approach. So if you're interested in applying for a grant somewhere and you want to collect testimonial data, right? That is a very different type of data collection than trying to quantify before and after, how much they learn before and after an intervention. Next slide, please. How and why do we collect data? Next slide, please. So describe your current data collection in your organization, and go ahead and you can probably drop that in the chat. Why does it look this way? And I think in the next slide, but I can go ahead and share this because it might help you as you think through your current data collection. Here you go. There's a lot of different methods and reasons for data collection. So somebody's saying surveys. I'm going to pop into the chat and look in a minute. So you have these internal, this is my list, is kind of how I break it down. You have internal data collection, things HR might collect, or you as a school might collect just for your own purposes. And then you have what I call external data collection. So that could be, there's a database that documents all of the zip codes of the people in your school or in your programs. You might collect data for a study or a grant, that you have to document, and all the metrics that you promised that you would collect for the grant. You have what I call active versus passive. So passive would be like a database that is automatically capturing things, program participation, or when somebody enrolls, they go into some big database, and it's just kind of passive data collection. But active, I would call these surveys and program evaluations and things that you are conceiving yourself to try to understand something better. And you may use a variety of analysis software. You may be intimidated by analysis software, but I'm here to tell you, you can do some amazing things with Excel. I use very sophisticated software. I use, well, you name it, I use it, but I use Python and, you know, things that maybe lots of people would be intimidated by are, but you don't have to use that. You can make a map with heat map with the places where people are, you know, higher in population and lower in population. You can do that in Excel. So there are a lot of things that you can do. You'd be surprised. And then reports. So think about the kinds of reports that you're asked to make throughout the year. And one thing I like to encourage people to do is to think about the ways that you might want to overlap some of these reports. You know, and the data collection efforts. Hold on, I'm going to look. I don't mean to share I want to look at the chat. Let's see, Hopkins in the building. I see that. Let's see. So end of program surveys. Yeah, so there's probably a lot of pre and post work. And one of the things I think a lot about is, and I think I gave this in the talk last year, is I talk more about how working together with various other departments or groups and trying to coordinate some of the survey work also helps. So you might be able to piggyback on the same longer survey, because survey fatigue can be a problem too. If you thought, I just filled that out, didn't I just spend 10 minutes filling out something else? So coordinating these efforts is also really important. So surveys, enrollment database, PD evaluation, assessment databases, formative observations form. Yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot of different ways that you're asked to collect data. And sometimes it's hard to include everyone. You know, you're just trying to get it done. I mean, and what I've found, and with educators in particular, is you don't get paid to do the data stuff too. You know, you're trying to teach the thing, program it and everything. And so that makes it extra challenging too. So sometimes this kind of strategic planning across groups to see how they can find those moments where they can survey and maybe combine two surveys and then split the data off. You know, sometimes that's just something to think about. Next slide, please. So understanding and reporting. Next slide, please. So this isn't something you probably learn in epidemiology school too much. Well, now you do maybe, because the visualization tools are so cool, but I'm really interested in humanizing our data, because that's the whole purpose of this, well, of many projects in equity, is to really tell that narrative that you already know. You already know the story, or at least you know what you want to learn, and you know what you suspect, or else you wouldn't be even trying to collect it, right? So it's important to think, to feel confident enough to look at the data and draw conclusions and think about how to humanize it. And, you know, I'm a pretty good grant writer, and it's because I'm good at doing that. I can take pilot data, then I can tell the story, then I can do a case study, then I can do a narrative, then I can put in a quote. So think about how to use both quantitative, those numbers, those statistics, but also qualitative data, the stories that people have. That lived experience is so rich and powerful in this, especially in this topic in equity research. So how do we summarize and make a point that connects back to our purpose and is meaningful to others? Please don't ever minimize your instinct and your knowledge of this topic, or of this thing that you're trying to measure, the people that you care about. Don't ever minimize that because it's not data, right? That's the story. Let these numbers support it. Next slide, please. And it looks like you're going to have a breakout and meet with your team and discuss your current data collection, barriers, and potential ways you can review and assess your data that aligns with equity.
Thank you so much, Danielle. So yeah, we're going to open up breakout rooms. And please go ahead and self-select into your teams. And and it should be labeled with your teams. So you can go ahead and join those rooms, and we will meet back here in 20 minutes or at 6:15.
Can you send the breakout link again? It's not showing.
Coaches, you're welcome to join one of your team's rooms.
So real quick there, I don't think that there will be a link. You may just need to click breakout at the bottom of your Zoom window and then scroll down and you should see your team name and that's the breakout you need to join. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna switch to my computer. I don't see it on my phone for some reason.
Okay, if you just let me know, I'm actually not looking at in gallery view. Let me know your name and your team and I can move you to where you need to be.
Ruth Ray, Warrensville.
Ruth Warrensville. Ruth E, correct?
Yes, Ruth A. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right,
Okay, thank you. Just popped up.
perfect.
Hello, my name is.
Oh,
Hello?
I just lost you. Okay, can we take the slides down? Sorry. And that way I can easily see everyone that's chatting or speaking to us. So I heard a couple people who.
Okay. Just a couple more seconds and we should be seeing everybody's back. All right. All right, everybody's coming back into the room. So we just want to take a couple minutes and see if anyone had anything insightful to share about the data that they found, what they talked about with their team, and then how this talk has been effective in how you want to move forward with collecting data. So you're welcome to share in the chat or come off mute.
I'll just speak for Houston as the mentor, just to kind of put our thoughts together. But we talked about how the lack of data that speaks to a system that doesn't have access to data. But they talked about how by creating a system or software or platform where you can collect the data, how it has implications for bringing multiple stakeholders into viewing the data, using the data. So while something might seem like a barrier right now, it may not actually be down the line, and it might actually invite more opportunities. So all this will come through in their logic model, hopefully.
I think that's such an important point, that the infrastructure, and it's especially true in areas that need this work the most. And just one thing I'd suggest to you, and now you know a data scientist, me, but I'm sure you have local universities. You can reach out to me or any other data scientist that you might know and ask them for support and help in this. I mean, there might even be a grant available to help to build the infrastructure for your data collection. But certainly I'm always available, totally free to help answer your questions or help you build that data infrastructure.
So I just wanted to ask, because we're a first year team coming to this, what is the data we're actually supposed to bring other than the demographic data of our teachers and students? What data are we going to be working with at the summit? Because I'm not getting clarity around that.
That's going to be dependent on the idea that your team has brought and plans on working on at the summit, right? So if you're focused on attracting educators with diverse backgrounds into your education system, you might want to look at where you already are, what your current situation is and current metrics are. Then you want to consider where the priority areas are if you're looking at a district team, right? What schools maybe, Are these folks concentrated in, or if you're looking at statewide, what district? You want to look at the district level. So that really will depend on one, the idea that your team is bringing, but also what you understand as your priority areas once you have the data available to you. And we're also wanting you to think about, what's missing, right? So once you have this data available, what other questions do we need to answer based on the information that we have now and what we want to do with the idea that we're putting together at the summit? So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it does.
So we have time for one more share if anyone's interested.
I'll speak for the New Orleans and Charles Parish. So I think that they have a very good, great start on data. They are looking at the district data, the state data that they have for the region, specifically for the parish, and they have multiple schools in the area. So they are going to get together with their IT department as well to be able to dig deeper into it and be able to get information specific for courses. And then SAT tests, also tests in science and STEM to be able to get that information. They also have an initiative of doing some surveys right now. So they're going to be able to see if they can add additional information as well to get information for the students and the parents as well on how they can get support. Because one of their goal is to have a representation for teachers in high advanced STEM classes. So that's the whole idea. So I think that they have a great start right now. I'm excited about that.
That is really exciting. Well, while we're we're coming, up on 6:30. So I just wanted to give an opportunity to Danielle to kind of bring it home, and I'll just share my screen here and kind of give some conclusions about what today was all about.
Yeah, I mean, and this is really a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, this is, as somebody pointed out, that infrastructure needs to be built. The coalition building needs to be there, the understanding of the underlying population needs and all these things. I mean, this isn't something that can happen overnight. You can make small changes that make a big difference in over time. And your skills will develop over time as well. And a lot of times you're going to have to try lots of different things to collect your data and get the results that you want. Next slide, please. So equity research is messy and hard, but it's worthwhile if it tells the true story. And that's certainly true in the clinical research that I do. It is hard to recruit people who aren't just popping up at our clinic and signing up for studies and calling us. It's hard to go out and find folks to make our work more diverse, but it tells the true story. And sometimes that means it cures the disease, right? So it's really important and worthwhile. Let the data inform the story that you're already trying to tell. Use the data to make your case. So I'm not saying, decide what your, story is. You shouldn't do that in science, right? You should have an open mind as a researcher, as a scientist. But what I mean is that, you have a sense of what needs to be collected and what story you want to tell, and use the data to support that. Don't feel intimidated by the data and disconnected from what your intuition, that data-driven nap time story that I told. Don't let yourself be disconnected from that. Traditional data practices tell us how things seem to be, right? All the patients with ALS seem to be white, right? But equitable data practices tell us how they are. Don't be intimidated by the data. As I said, let it be in service to your message. And I think I've said that a couple of times, but I really mean that. The data narrative, that's data. Qualitative data is data. Just because it doesn't have a p-value and a mean and a fancy chart and statistics doesn't mean it's not data. If you collect it well, you're organized, and you have a strong protocol, then you are collecting data. So don't forget the importance of that, especially if it's the only way you can collect data. Don't leave it on the table because it doesn't fit into the survey that everyone who clicks on the link online is able to fill out. Everyone besides a certain group or a couple of individuals. It's all important. If you're allowed to, if you're allowed to design your own data collection, then do that and influence others to leave open-ended comments, for example, in your surveys as well. And you don't need special skills to be good at data collection. Good data is about instinct. This is a lot about your instinct, and especially in this area where you are on the front line. You know better than anyone what's going on. You just need to document it so that you can get other people interested and more supportive of your cause. Next slide, please. And here I have a bunch of resources, which I know will be posted for you elsewhere later that might be of interest to you. I'm developing a data science course for machine learning, artificial intelligence with an equity focus. And so some of these resources are actually I'm using in the course. There's a really good video from a writer who wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. And I think you'll really enjoy that if you're interested in this topic. And it covers lots of areas, not just healthcare as well. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. And I encourage you, I think my email might be on the last slide. Yeah, maybe not, but yes. So that's my email, dboyce3@jhu.edu. And I mean it. Reach out to me. I really want to be a source of support and encouragement for you as you go through this data journey. Thank you.
So
if you have any questions, I'm here.
Just want to give it up for Danielle for coming out tonight and talking to us about her expertise and helping us to create more equitable data and apply it to our logic models. So with that, we can take probably one question for Danielle if anyone has any. All right, if we don't have any questions, you can drop them in the chat if you would like. I see chat is open. Okay, great. And we will include Danielle's information in the follow-up email. So if you want to reach out to her for more information as well. And a couple of reminders that we have. So your itinerary should be in your inbox in the next few days. I know Alex is working really hard on getting those out. And then orientation recording is up on Moodle if you missed that. All the recordings will be up on Moodle shortly. So we are working on that and making sure that you get all the information that you need for any folks that needed to step away from the sessions. And then we will also be sending out or attaching a checklist for items that you need to be bringing to the summit. So we will be sending that out in the next few days. With that being said, if you have questions for myself, or the professional services team, now is the time. Otherwise, one more time for Danielle, just like spirit fingers. And we're so grateful and so excited to be seeing you in New Orleans. Did I miss anything, Sherelle?
No, I think you got it all. That is it for tonight. Just a quick reminder, I don't know if you saw it in the chat, we are actively trying to update Moodle more and more throughout the rest of this week into next week. So you will see tonight's presentation in Moodle and any other resources that you like to share. If you're having difficulty for any reason updating it yourself, feel free to send it my way, and I will make sure that resource or any information you want to share amongst your colleagues goes up into Moodle as well. Really want to make it something that you actively use throughout the program and of course after as well. So feel free to make it your own. And just want to thank Danielle again for your time with us. It's always a pleasure having you here, sharing everything that you know and helping us to become more confident and comfortable understanding and learning about data. So thank you again.
I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, take care. Ruth, I see your hand.
You know what this is? Thank you. Tonight was great. Excited.